The topic of this presentation is precision teaching and fluency. The reason why I chose this topic was because we use the Maloney program for reading in our autism unit in my school district. And from what I could gather this past few years, I've been noticing a drift effect, so to speak, from the way I understood it to work. And so I was delving into this research to make sure I knew what I was talking about. And we have drifted, and I think it will be beneficial that I use this information to therefore help our classroom teachers, and through that help our students. Okay, so what is precision teaching? It's a more effective, cost-efficient method of adapting a style of learning to meet the individual needs of each student. It involves systematic review of the effectiveness of an instructional tactic. It's not an instructional method per se. So you can use any curricula or any teaching strategies along with this method to help the student further progress. Precision teaching was originated by Lindsley and was based on 5 major tenets from Skinner's experimental analysis of behavior. The most fundamental guiding principle is that the learner knows best. So if the child or student is progressing, then their programming is, quote, right for them. And if they are not, then the program needs to be adjusted and made to fit the student better so they can progress. Frequency is the performance measurement, and frequency is the average number of behaviors during each minute of the assessment period. And a usefulness of behavior is determined by the frequency of it. Therefore, the frequency can reveal how well a student is performing that accuracy statements might actually obscure. So if you have 3 trials, each being at 100%, what we don't know is how long it took them to complete the trial. What we also don't know, just by that number, is how many items were in each trial. So you have a 3 and a 5 and a 15 item trials, then they're not the same. So 100% can show accuracy, but it's not going to show fluency, so you're not getting the whole picture. These are standard charts to record progress of the students, and this saves time because it doesn't have to be remade over and over again. And it becomes easier to read and interpret as a record of student progress due to usage over time by the educator. Then, they're being fluent with the chart because they've used it more, and it's become more familiar, and they're comfortable with it. So these scales on the chart are standard, and this helps the interpretation and explanation to be more clear. It does limit distortion of students' progress as well. And so precision teaching chart is called a acceleration chart. So if a behavior is moving up, it's accelerating. If it's decreasing, it's decelerating. So acceleration is the root word in both of those. And programs being used with a student can be compared simply and directly, with chances of misinterpretation being greatly reduced by using this standard chart, the acceleration chart. Constructing and manipulating effective instructional environment requires that one be aware of all the elements within the environment that might influence or actually do influence behavior. Functional definitions of impact of the environment on the behavior are focused on rather than an element description. Parallel system for describing the environment is used. There's an is plan, what is in the environment and might it affect behavior. And the does plan, what elements do actually influence the student's behavior. Here is an example of acceleration chart, and you can see all the parts labeled. It is on a ratio. Up here on the left, you can see the record floor is 1, and it goes up from a ratio of 10 up from there. So from 1 to 10, it's 1 times 10, and from 10 to 100, 10 times 10. So you see that the x's represent what we are decelerating in this case, and the dots are what they are accelerating. And you can see program change lines coming down vertically, and the number of calendar days at the bottom and the calendar weeks at the top. And this correlates with like half a school year, and that would start typically the first Sunday in September after Labor Day. And this is the hyperlink where the behavior research company is located in the web, and you can go straight to them. And if that's where you wanted to go, you could order acceleration charts in various quantities for your company or for your school. So in the implementation of precision teaching, there's a three-step process. It includes evaluating information gathered and making systematic decisions on what or how instruction needs to continue. So we're going to pinpoint the target of a program. This involves movement and repeatability. So movement is any directly observable behavior involving physical movement of some sort. You know, like walking or talking, writing. Behaviors that don't require movement, such as being quiet, are defined in observable terms of movement, for example, vocalization. So instead of being quiet, you're going to focus on how many vocalizations are recorded. Again, so they're directly observable and measurable. They use a dead man's test. So if a dead man can do it or look like he's doing it, it is not a behavior. Repeatability, it is important that the target behaviors can be repeated many times during an instructional session, as well as establishing conditions that will encourage the student to repeat the behavior often. So instructors can enhance repeatability by redefining the target, for example, breaking the sequence down into steps, or how the response is given, oral versus written. Ideally, target movements that are selected and conditions established will allow the behavior to occur at least 10 times during an instructional session. So when we're considering on the count, we're talking about the number of times the movement cycle occurs during a time that's being counted. So it's best if the student has opportunity to practice and demonstrate their level of skill daily of the target behavior. May need to start at 30 seconds and, of course, then build up as their endurance increases. Some behaviors need to be monitored throughout the day, like toilet training. It's important to keep the length of the assessment period from day to day the same. This keeps factors like fatigue and warm-up time, reasonably constant. And then the results need to be recorded ASAP on the chart, the acceleration chart, preferably by a student. So no important aspect of students' behavior is overlooked. We can forget looking back as opposed to doing it in the moment. It's a quick and simple process. Should not take any more than 3 or 4 seconds. Again, that would become getting used to it would be important. So again, frequency is the count divided by assessment time in minutes. It's plotted by placing a dot or an X on the appropriate day line of the chart using basic charting conventions that we discussed before. So the dot would be the one you want to accelerate, and the X in this case would be the one you want to decelerate. You want to evaluate a pupil's progress daily. If it's satisfactory, continue. If not, change. A lot of teachers will go like 3 out of 5 probes, for example, but those probes may not all happen on one day. When we're dealing with working with the fluency, it is important to see where we are on a daily basis. this is just a brief outline of the process of the review of literature I did. As you can see, those were my keywords. That's where I got my sources. Basically what all the documents said in total. You see that in that middle paragraph of the analysis. And the main focus being, to increase fluency and retention as well. And how it was applied to students within these articles. And then the staff med also came out. Say all fast, a minute each day, shuffle. Then I will then be looking to do that for myself for the test. So over time, through these articles, you can see other researchers then building on what Lindsley did. And one of the first extensions was retention application performance standards by Houghton. And then to REAPS, so then they put the endurance in here as well. So you have retention, endurance, and application performance standards. Retention is improved by increasing the frequency of responses. And the one article was talking about a lower cognitive student, for example, may have to have a lot more practice in order for that retention piece or the endurance piece to progress. Also, the composite can be more fluent if all the component pieces are fluent. So when you focus on the components and get those more and more fluent, then the composite itself should actually also increase in fluency. And then that helps with retention because you're not struggling so much just to get through it. The E for endurance, distractibility, attention span truly affects fluency. So if they can't focus on what they're doing, then mistakes are made. So that affects fluency. So you might go down to shorter durations or intervals to show less variability. Therefore, they're scoring a little more constant when they're improving, and there's less time for off-task behaviors. So if you're really struggling with a student who can't focus for very long, you want to really pinpoint when they start to shut down in those timetables. So if you're doing a minute and they're lasting 30, 45 may be pushing it. So you might go back down to 30 or 35 and
seconds.
Then go from there.
That would be seconds.
And like I said before, higher frequency of component skills improves application in composite skills. So if you've got your math facts down and you're fluent with your math facts, it's much easier to take those math facts and then apply them in a word problem to come up with the correct formula and therefore the correct answer to that math problem. REAPS are expressed as ranges, allowing for individual variations. So you can see here how it kind of extended, like I was speaking to before. Principles have continued to evolve, and rate building was added beyond acquisition, and the stages of learning was expanded to include, here we have acquisition, fluency building, endurance building, and applying. And here's some of the researchers that were involved in these studies. Direct instruction is combined with precision teaching in the Maloney method, and it was about the refinement of instructional design. And I did notice that there are schools out there, academies out there in the United States. Direct instruction and precision teaching are both there. I don't see precision teaching without direct instruction. I can't say that it never happens, but when I saw them on the web as their school web pages, both were present. And when we work with our students in our classrooms with the Maloney Method Reader, it's always during a direct teach moment when they cycle through the direct teacher table. That's when that happens. Here are some examples that I found on the web currently being used. The Morningside Academy is up in Seattle. It's been around since I think 1980. And these are direct instruction, precision teaching, generativity. Those are what they focus on. And then they also have a think aloud problem solving process. The Maloney method is what we use for reading in our units for autism. And here you can see all the evidence-based practices all tied within that method. The two at the bottom, of course, will have what we've been discussing, direct instruction and precision teaching. But it goes back to clear objectives. We know what we're measuring. We know what we're looking for. Behavioral management comes from managing the time that they are off task by working through fluency, keeping the practice sessions realistic for their ability, and taking in mind, their endurance levels. This is a list of resources you can go to read about, learn about precision teaching, and the Pinterest board there's a couple different behavior analyst sites, but if you typed in precision teaching, it would bring you to these blogs and some videos that would give you examples. And there's manuals out there you can buy on Amazon.com, as well as you can go through university links and get information from there. Carl Bender is also one of the researchers that was on several of the articles I read, and he does have a company on the East Coast, I believe. And this is the name of it, Precision Teaching Management Systems Incorporated, and it has a tag, a human performance company. And this is what they do: employ learning through proven tips and tools for managers. So it's fluency in the business world in different environments. And lastly, these last few pages are my resources, with the orange being hyperlinked to some of my sources. And on the final page, the last resource is a hyperlink to the chart book that you can get through Professor White's University of Wisconsin website. And finally, this is a link here at the bottom where you can actually access the chart book that I found online through this professor in the University of Wisconsin. So that's where I read about acceleration charts.